Do you ever feel like nobody knows what's going on at your church? Like you feel like nobody is ever really listening to you when you're giving the announcements? Well, in this episode, what I want to talk about is the problem with most church and youth ministry announcements. So if you're a youth pastor, a person in church communications, a pastor, this will help increase and uptick your engagement around announcements. I want to talk about the ultimate goal with all church announcements, and finally stick around because I'm going to share with you 3 reasons that your church announcements may not be going as well as you think, plus 1 solution for each of those reasons, including a concept called inadvertent blindness. We're going to dive into that, and I have a free resource that I think can absolutely change the game for you. I think part of our problem here in 2025 in churches in North America, or let's just be honest, around the world, is that we need to stop acting as churches like we're in the 1990s and stop making boring announcements. Give me a like if you've heard the stat that we as humans have a shorter attention span now than goldfish. If that's the case, then we definitely have to figure something out, because you have some great things going on at your church, and if people don't know about it, they can't get to them. Let's talk about it. Welcome, my friends, to the Hybrid Ministry Show. So what is our problem, right? Like our ultimate problem with bad church announcements is that nobody is showing up, or that like nobody even knows about what we have going on. I did a video a while back called Youth Pastor or Event Coordinator. It's going to be linked right up here at the top of the screen if you're watching here on YouTube. But one of the things I've learned in my 14 years of youth ministry experience is that attendance and just people simply showing up, that's a really important factor to planning a good event. You can have an awesome event, but if you don't have people there, it's going to be a problem. And part of people getting there is knowing that the event is happening and understanding, knowing, hearing, and, like realizing that you're giving a church announcement that requires action out of them. In the video, I explore this kind of tension, right, that many of us in ministry, church ministry, like regardless of if you're in youth ministry or not, we feel about our jobs. And are we meant to be doing what we're doing to ultimately make disciples, or are we doing what we're doing to plan killer events? And sometimes, if you're anything like me, let's just be honest, it feels like our job, like it has morphed much more into an event planner. And I don't know about you, but that's not exactly why I got into youth ministry, right? But the problem, right, that's the problem with our church announcements, is because we have an event and we want people to get to it. Poor attendance is the problem with bad church announcements, okay? And so if attendance is our issue, if that's the baked-in assumption, if that's the baked-in desire, and when we say, nobody knows what's going on, it's because nobody is attending our events. That is the quote, nobody. That's where that is coming from. So let's take a step back then, even more, right, than just the event, than just the good or not so good church announcement, and ask ourselves, like, what is our goal around this event? What is our goal by giving this announcement? All right. So our goal, just like the problem, or the opposite of the problem, our goal is to get more people aware of and more people to know about the thing, the event, the Bible study, the workshop, like whatever it is, right? Is that the goal? No, it's not our goal. At least not ultimately, at least not the meta goal, right? Attendance is not necessarily the goal in and of itself. But like I said, when we feel like event coordinators, it can feel like the goal. The goal in church ministry, the goal with all of your events, ultimately, the reason you're even having such and such event is life transformation. Give me a subscribe if you agree with that statement. Life transformation is the ultimate goal, not attendance. It certainly helps having people there at your event, because if they're not there, how can their lives be transformed? So I'll give you that, but we have to stop making attendance the ultimate goal and have to start realizing that we're really trying to be in the business about life transformation, which is done and led down the path through disciple making. And so you got to remember that prior to the digital era, attendance was the means to accomplish that life transformation. But we live now in the digital era, and so we can reach people and we can disseminate a message through much more efficient and effective means now with cell phones and technology and podcasts and YouTube videos and social media, and fill in whatever blank you want to, right? You got to realize that getting people in the room was originally that goal towards life transformation, but that's not exactly the era that we're living in. So what is the goal? If the goal is life transformation, how can we accomplish that? And also, how can we accomplish that in the new digital era, right? Churches, I referenced it in the intro, churches are operating like it's the 1990s. And here's what I mean by that. In the 1990s, if you wanted to watch Seinfeld, you had to catch it live on NBC the night that it aired and debuted. And if you didn't, then you better hope that you have a good DVR, which I don't even know if those existed in the 90s. And then if you didn't have that, then tough luck, man. You're going to have to catch that sucker on syndication when it comes out in the summer. Compare that to the drop of Stranger Things Season 2, where my wife and I, pre-children, watched the entire season on a Saturday, right? Like, it's just a completely different mindset and framework. We live in a Netflix culture, not a cable TV culture. And so people, when you have information, they're operating under the guise of it being Netflix. But we're treating it like cable TV. Like, we say this thing, like, I'm going to share with you the key to life. They're like, cool, tell me where to find it. And you're like, Sunday at 10 o'clock. It's the only time to find it. That's a huge cultural disconnect. So I have a few ideas of 3 different problems and a solution for each of the problem. Let's dive in. So one of the reasons that I think our church announcements can tend to be failing is this first concept here, I think, is just that we live in a culture with an oversaturation of noise. You know, there's so much noise around us. There's so much and so many things. They're just simply vying for our attention. And so we as a church, we too are vying for people's attention. Paul Yangon on a Carey Nieuwhof podcast called it inadvertent blindness. And what he said, we really only see what we're looking for. And so the fact is, if people aren't looking for your church thing, again, that Netflix versus cable TV, if they're not looking for it, like, oh, I heard there was a retreat, so I'm going on the website to find the answer to it, right? As opposed to us who we're dishing it out. We're like, well, we announced it on Sunday. They weren't looking for it on Sunday, right? It's that oversaturation of noise, inadvertent blindness, right? So if you got to think about some of the noises in the world, I shared this a couple videos back. I'll share it again here. It's going to be linked on screen if you're watching on YouTube. I'd love to have you take a look. If you're in a podcast catcher, you can scroll down and click the link to our YouTube video. I'd love to have you over there. Give us a like if you show up over there. But this video here talks about how we spend our time, especially spending our time online, and the online amount of time like that we as people sociologically have spent time on phones and on devices has skyrocketed compared to some of the time prior to the invention of tech, which, let's just be honest, is not necessarily a surprise, but it is a factor that we have to deal with, right? In today's day and age in 2025, people that don't know what's going on, it's probably because there's so much to pay attention to. So my proposal, right, my solution is get my free hybrid strategy guide. It's linked down below in the show notes. And the reason why that's important is because that will help you shift in some areas from a cable TV culture where the only time that people can hear you, hear the message of Jesus, hear your announcements, whatever the case might be, to more of a Netflix culture. And it encourages you to show up where people are spending their time, which is on social media, right? Give me a sub, right? If you've ever heard or thought this before, like, hey, we need to get the word out. Let's blitz our social channels. And if all you're ever doing is blitzing your social channels with getting the word out, then you're just turning your social channels into an announcement bulletin board. And that's not what those were made for. And so you're going to have a less effective reach on those social channels because you're not using them what they were made for. Instead, send an announcement out via like a push notification, a text message, or even like update it on a calendar, right? And what we do is like we encourage our parents and our students to just like subscribe to our Google Calendar. And so if something changes, it changes on our end. It'll change on their end if they're subscribed to it in their where? In their calendar, which is what like an event, that's where an event is meant to be, inside a calendar. But not just on your church calendar, on your church website that you want people to go to so that they know about your event. You want it to somehow get to their personal calendar. That's how people live their lives, through their calendars. So use the things that are meant to be used for the purposes that they're made for. And you should use social media for the purposes that it's made for. My hybrid strategy guide will help you knock social media out of the park and become more hybrid with some of your messages and other channels and usages on social media. So the second reason that I believe that some of our church announcements are falling flat is because we as churches are living in a cable TV mentality versus a Netflix or an on-demand mentality, right? You understand, we've been talking about that in this video. The person who I think has helped navigate that best for churches is Brady Shear up at Pro Church Tools. And he has a website builder called NUCLEUS. And now whether you use his website builder or not, and if you don't really have experience building websites, then I 100% recommend NUCLEUS because it's a church website builder for churches and by church like people. And so you don't have to have a ton of like website skills to make it happen. Like a noob like me can build a website using NUCLEUS. But more than that, like what I want you to understand is that his concept behind it being NUCLEUS is that every church announcement is done on the website. And so as opposed to like you getting up on the stage and saying, if you want like information about Bunko Night, talk to dear Aunt Sally. And if you want information about the youth retreat, talk to Youth Pastor Ryan. And if you want to give, you can give via our website. You can do text to give. You can scan this QR code for Venmo. We have Apple Pay. We have Google Pay. And if you want to know about the prayer meeting, email Chuck at ourchurch.com. And the kids ministry has a big camp out thing coming up. Swing by and grab a flyer in the lobby. Like there were 5 different call to actions in that, right? There's Sally, there's the youth pastor, there's any different amalgamation of giving opportunities. There's emailing, and then there's a flyer. And he said, make your NUCLEUS, make your church website your one-stop shop. I created a video. I'll link it down below a couple weeks back. And the video is literally titled, I created this video so that you don't have to hire me. And in it, I talk about my 3-step strategy guide, which you'll get some of that in my hybrid ministry strategy guide if you download that from earlier. But in the video, the 3-step strategy is step number 1, update and keep your website up to date. Your website should be a reliable one-stop shop for everybody. And one of the ways to make your announcements better is to have the support of your website behind it. And so, like, for example, Brady uses this example all the time, like a trailer for a movie. When you go to the theater, you're not like sitting there watching a trailer to a movie that you can't wait to see. And it ends with them being like, now on November 27th, it's going to be showing at 11:30. 1, 1:15, 2:30, and that's going to be in theater 6. Theater 7 is going to have it at 3:15. Like, no, that's boring. But that's what we do as churches, right? Bunko night. Here's all the details in the fellowship hall. Bring a dip to share. It's going to be on November 27th. It's going to be at 7:30. If you don't have any dice, make sure you contact dear Aunt Sally and she'll bring you an extra pair of dice. That's boring. And so we're trying to take information and make that be the thing that captures people's attention. And you know as well as I, especially if you're trying to use social media for that, that's not what social is used for. Best, you're not going to hook them with the quote information. And so what do we do to capture their attention? So a movie trailer is just like, it like makes you like fall in love with the idea of this movie Wicked. And then when it comes out, what do? You go discover when it's playing. You go to the website. You figure out how to get the tickets. You wanted to do it first, and then that promoted you to action. In church, we give all the information and hope that that's going to promote people to action, and it has the opposite effect. And so if you back up your church announcements with a good website that's always up to date, you can get on stage and make your announcements good, closer to like a movie trailer-esque, knowing that your website is going to answer the questions that people are looking for. So my solution to this cable TV versus on-demand world is I have a resource, I have a service called Communications for You. It's where I will run your church communications. I will make your website. I'll keep it up to date. I can even help promote and manage some of your socials. And so you can explore more of what that looks like in the link down below. But I'm sure as I'm explaining, like you should have a good website and all these things, you're like, that sounds great. I don't have time. I can make your announcements better by keeping your website behind you good, clean, and up to date. And then reason number 3 is very simply, your announcements are just boring. Like they're just boring. And what I have for you is an announcement strategy that I want to encourage you to start stealing for better, more crisp, and clearer church announcements. And that is going to be linked on the video in the very next video in this playlist and in this series. And so that's going to be right here on screen. If you see that, go ahead and tap on in so that you can get better and less boring church announcements. We'll see you over there in that video. And don't forget, my friends, as always, to stay hybrid.